We are extremely grateful for presentations by right now by Johannes and Michèle. They are co-organizers of Metabody project, and they had to deal with a lot of technical difficulties in this room because they are used to use proper technologies and difícil opciones, so and even more I must excuse myself because I am a historian, so I don't know much about what is the technology that we should use, but they are anyhow to present a great presentation and very useful not just for Metabody but for discussion later. So this is the panel Politics of Gesture, and Michèle Danjoux and Johannes Birringer, who are in the DAP-Lab in London, are going to talk about wearables, Choreosonic gestures, and the limits of control. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Eva. We are always grateful to be guests with historians, yeah, and thank you for inviting us. The idea of a paper for both of us does not work, so I think the context is perhaps, since we want to reflect on the Metabody project and perhaps respond to ideas and gesture, we will improvise and we'll have a dialogue. So I will probably ask questions and then Michèle will take us further into her design ideas. What I thought might be helpful is, and it's not necessarily a political approach, but it's a conceptual questioning of the apparatus and the role of the instrumental environment in which we work. So I wanted to bring up this notion of the controller. I think it's maybe a musical term, and then look at it in regard to architectures and the work that Michèle is developing for our lab. And she's my design collaborator. And Michèle, maybe introduce us perhaps to your design philosophy.
Yeah. So just so that you're all aware, I come from a fashion design background. I became involved with performance within interactive environments about 10 years ago. And in the first instance, I was interested in how movement and gesture could be part of a process of emergent design. But gradually I shifted and started to look at design as a way of looking at emergent movement and gesture. And that has then more recently incorporated sound. So the idea that sound, movement, body, costume or wearable, they're all interconnected and also then moving out into the space.
Historically speaking, we often take inspiration from examples that we analyze for ourselves and perhaps take inspiration from. We're not necessarily interested in deconstructing any historical models of performance creation or sonic creation or architecture, but we're looking at particular motifs. And in this case, perhaps, Michèle, we turn to the Russian constructivists.
Yeah.
And we saw this exhibition on the revolution, yeah? And that took us into a whole new area of exploring older analog techniques. For us, there are also shapes and there are forms.
Yes, and the design concepts that I develop are looking at integration of sounding technologies into the wearable so that it offers new potentials to the performer.
And over the years, we've worked with very small speakers and then larger speakers, as you saw, and bullhorns, and then speakers that Michèle integrated into the dress. And of course, the pendant to the speaker is the microphone. And in the modern contemporary arena of technologies, also sensors and vision systems, and we come to those in a minute. We prepared a few films, and of course the films have image and sound, but the sound system in this building is not functioning. So this gives me the opportunity to ask questions to Michèle while you are watching the film. So the first one is, from a gestural point of view, Michèle, how would you say the tower is not a gesture, but the tower becomes a corporeal problem?
I wouldn't see it as a problem, but it's a wearable instrument that invites gesture in order to generate sound.
So what are we looking at now in the performance?
So this particular scene that you're looking at was in a rehearsal for a performance, and the opening scene where the dancer is the only source of sound in the space. She's wearing an instrument I developed with a musician called John Richards, and it's looking at the Taplin Tower and the notion of radio transmissions and the idea that the dancer becomes a transmitter, a radio transmitter. She's given a sensor to work with, and the sensor that she holds controls the speed of a small motor that generates a kind of spinning motion on this little wire thing that you're seeing going around. That in turn beats the frame, the structural frame of the Taplin Tower, which is a double helix construction following the original designs from Taplin. That is then there's piezo integrated other technologies to generate the sound through via the black box which she's wearing. So it's an integrated instrument to be worn on the body. The box contains a speaker and an amplifier, so the dancer can sound in motion. And so she sat there for a long time. Initially, it was several minutes, just generating this very small sound that she can make silent or small hiss or create a beating that can increase in speed. Gradually, what happens is she stands up. The palpability of the instrument on her body also impacts on her movements. So she's feeling the weight, she's feeling the vibrations. I spent quite a long time talking to this particular performer, Vanessa Miquelon, about how the instrument impacted on her movements and the gestures that she had to develop.
So the question in the beginning that I didn't expand, namely, what is our dispositif, our arrangement, our system, and do we understand what the system means for us? And can the dispositif also be seen as a dress that you wear, and therefore does the dress or this construction have a very specific impact on the experience of the movement in the body, Jaime, maybe inside, because the vibrations go through the bones?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea for me with these wearables is not so much, whilst I'm interested in the aesthetics, it's not so much about that from the perspective of the spectator. It's much more about the experiential wearing, of feeling the objects on the body, of feeling the materiality. And then in this case of those vibrations, which Vanessa described as coursing through her body from her head to the box, and the box became an extension, an organ from her to enable her to shift sound around the space.
And then acoustically, we explored a range of possibilities inspired by Victory Over the Sun and this crazy futurist opera. So we turned to birds. We looked at early grammophonic tools, again connecting vinyl to horn, and then Caroline Wilkins became our bird character. And the beak, well, we can just mention the beak.
Yeah, the beak is actually designed to funnel the sound. And one of my concepts, which didn't quite materialize, was to give it a stylus and enable the performer to do a scratch performance with the wearable in the space with the gramophone.
And she also has an ocular device, because she's literally not able to see much, but she has one small microscopic eye.
It's a small LED. We work a lot with this idea of almost inhibiting the body by removing certain sensorial feeling or sensation from the performer. So they have to focus in different ways, and it draws different attentions to the performing body.
Okay, we quickly move forward because we can't go into the male characters today, and we only have 2 male characters. Most of the performers are dancers from different cultural backgrounds, having different corporeal technique systems that they bring and then working in our interactional scenario. So the next one would be the solar soul. Can you briefly introduce the concept.
The concept, this obviously relates to the narrative and the performance. All of these wearables belong in a particular environment or situation, so within the bigger narrative. So the sun has died in the narrative, and we wanted to bring out the idea of the residual energies, the solar energies. So these poles, excuse me, are light poles, solar light, and the dancer is extended by the poles. And what we see are purely the lights as a representation of her gestures in the space. And then what happens is the light is, you can't really see it in this film, but it sheds out, it refracts, and it reflects on the walls as well. So you're getting quite an interesting visual effect happening.
The whole first half of the second act is in the darkness, so you can't see the dancer anymore, but you see certain gestural, exponential effects as both the light and the sound are. She's also, I asked her to sing. This is interesting, perhaps from the dancer's point of view. She concentrated on the pole dance, inspired by Schlemmer, and the fragile lights. And when I asked her to sing, she found it difficult to focus on voice and movement at the same time. And we looked into that for a while, and I think at the end, Michèle, there is a bit of that reflections visible as she turns, almost like yesterday in Dieter van Doren's powerful performance, as she turns towards the back architecture, you see the refractions of the light spilling into the wall.
But just to say, sorry,
yeah.
that the body, the movement of the body is extended by the design. And this is a whole part of the process of looking at how gesture comes through design and through a wearing process, whether it be light poles or fully formed garments.
Great, Michèle, we're halfway through. The Gravedigger is our third example, and yesterday night, those of you who attended the performance, this wonderful piece by Pablo Palacio, Muriel, Daniel, and the team, they had several cameras in operation. So the vision system here that we're using in this scene is Kinect. And what we thought was interesting to play with the Kinect is because the Kinect likes to see an anatomy, or Jaime, you called it a skeletal, presence, so it can determine where to begin, the tracking. And we decided to start this dance without the arms. And also the dancer, Michèle, she's almost not able to see.
Yes, I mean the actual sarcophagus form that she's wearing comes from the earlier Lissitzky sketch, which was an unrealized idea for a mechanical version of the opera. But that was the start point, and then the idea that yes, the arms are no longer there to start with, and so the system is confused. And this idea of being slightly dysfunctional in the design concept in relation to the system interested me, because the whole opera was about subverting things. They wanted to kill the sun, whereas the sun had been venerated within Russian folklore. So it was this whole idea of restricting her and restricting the system initially.
And then to make the Kinect happy, the arm comes out with an extended glove, and eventually the tracking can begin.
And yes, she is not able to see very well, because she's touching the system in other ways. She understands the gestures, and she plays with the sun on the screen behind her, and also the sound, this idea of a pulsating, dying sun, all works through her gestures in this costume.
We don't have so much time, so maybe we just show the beginning of the Gravedigger scene. What's interesting, again, choreographically about the costumes or our wearables is that the design affects movement. She can only walk in tiny little Trippelschritte, walks past the sun, and then she's kind of entering the range of the Kinect camera. And this is something maybe we can discuss over the weekend, to what extent performers like to work with cameras or with microphones or amplification systems, and what happens in this relationship, because I think we're beginning to become more and more interested in relationships, and the last example will be about partnering.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll just move to that last section. Here, now that the tracking begins, she's able to cause the eclipse of the sun. Yeah. But let's move to our last discussion so we can draw some conclusions, perhaps, on this notion of the controller. What happened with your last and current prototype?
So what you're actually seeing on the screen is a close-up of a circuit on a wearable chest plate. It's a sounding chest plate, again an integrated instrument, placing the sound on the body, so the sound is coming directly from the body of the performer. It's a piece that's designed to be used in together with another performer because it's integrating proximity sensors and photocells. So the idea of drawing another closer and in a way playing with movement and gesture to see what happens in that particular case. I mean, a lot of the designs that are produced are provocations. They're ways of looking for ways forward.
So the beginning is an interaction with voice, and then it continues with attempts that we're making to introduce partnering. Yeah.
And the red dress is a red micro dress. It integrates a small wearable microphone system into the dress that can transmit wirelessly the data or the voice or the hissing sounds that are coming from Rosella, the performer speaking into the microphone. The idea that the microphone is located where it is saying that it doesn't belong to the wearer, it belongs to the partner in a way.
So the dress amplifies, and at the same time our system is recording what she's saying here. It's a stage direction from the second act. And then our sound team that's off stage can begin to process the voice as the scene continues. So now they separate, and we're beginning to work with this notion of also the distance and the coming back together. And gesturally, I guess we this would need a lot more time now to reflect on the nature of the gestural interaction, because our gestures are adopted from Russian propaganda, and then they are modulated. Yeah. So Vanessa dances Rodchenko, and I told Angeliki that perhaps the chest plate is like a guitar, and I asked her to play her chest as a guitar.
But there's also design features. It's not just about the technologies in the garments, it's also about the materials of the garments. So the arm of the red dress is quite stiff, and it's encouraged Vanessa to work in certain ways with the arms that brought about the gestures in relation to the Rodchenko.
So we come to the end. So the quartet or the duet is still developing, and we are now also exploring. This is the last scene where she is encountering the Japanese dancer, and the Japanese dancer is doing a voice monologue and then walks past her and interacts with the sound of the dress. And we're still working on what's happening in those moments when the actor meets a sound-making performer. Yeah.
I mean, it is all connected to the idea of noise music as well. So the sound may be an irritant in the space, and so the gesture that generates the sound is creating this irritation.
Okay. Ending, we are beginning now to formulate some positions which are more on a poetic level. I know that on a basic level the dispositif is a slapstick system. Yeah. So when you set up a reactive system and you ask an audience member or a visitor to step in, I think very often, as you are trying to explore the system, you gesture in the air. Yeah. while the system pretends that it's allowing you to remix or to explore or to experience sonic or visual effects. And this is something we need to, I think, question. The whole interactive setup is I think, is a failed proposition. And then when you look at the parameterization with MaxMSP and other softwares, the gestural range is quite limiting. Yeah, move your hands in this way and that way. And I think even when we observe very experienced dancers, when you are testing a sensitive system, it's quite in a way interesting to see the limitation. I mean, Michèle, I don't know, for you, maybe from a design point of view, you like the limitation. Yeah.
I do quite like working with restriction of using design to alter movement and gesture, and that's part of the focus of what I would be exploring in the creation of the wearables.
And then this sensing of your own tactility, your own the vibrations, the sort of proprioception, Jaime, yeah, is of course very much the case. Our dancers are becoming aware that the dress affects their movement awareness. But what exactly is that now for the dancer who is a technically trained, performance artist and wants to perform to an audience, yeah? And what is it for us as performance maker, like yesterday night when we work with these systems? How do we stack the levels, yeah, of the movement, the sonic, and the animation, as we saw yesterday? And then who controls what? Yeah, and this I think is the question that we are now beginning to ask more frequently.
Yeah.
And we end with this thought of the couturier, this notion of a system whether it fits the dancer. Coming from fashion, I think the notion of contouring or the couture, yeah, of an exponential instrument dancer interests us. To what extent? You saw the beginning slides I had from Japan. It's very funny how they're selling it. They say the system is a wonderful inertial motion capture system, relatively low cost and fairly accurate, lightweight, low stress, low latency, fitted to the dancer. So this notion of fitting it, making the system become a good fit, I think is something that we politically want to look at conceptually.
Definitely.
Any last thoughts, Michèle?
Last thoughts. Just that again, this whole question that is in my mind now is about the data and what we do with that data and how the dancer feels about us using her gestures to generate data that we can then use in different ways. I think that's quite a big question.
Thank you very much.